Alright, this video I'd like to say that I am not a black belt, but I feel that black belts just simply should not exist unless they are being properly represented to a very high level. So to me, a black belt is supposed to represent, if there is such a thing as a black belt, it's supposed to represent the beyond, okay? In Kung Fu, there's not supposed to be any rankings and belts and things like that. I feel that it's similar to, businesses, corporations. There's no black belts in businesses and corporations, but there's going to be CEOs. There's going to be founders of the business. There's going to be people that are in charge. When you go work for a company, there's going to be a boss over you. Like there's going to be that type of authority. But as far as what black belts are being represented by, it's not being properly, represented and distributed. For example, you might have a martial arts school that might give out 1,000 black belts. The more black belts that you give out, the less value that there is. That's just the way commodities work. When they make cars, the exotic cars, they might just make a few of them, maybe like 5 of them in the world, and then they charge like millions of dollars. The more that you give out to people, the less value that there is. So when you have so many people that claim black belt, it just devalues what it's supposed to represent. So I would say that I do not have a black belt, but what I do say is that people that do have one, they should be beyond what I can do. Because for me, I could say that I'm a beginner. I could say that I'm a white belt. I don't have a black belt, I don't have a white belt, but I could say that I'm a student. I could say that I'm a beginner, And Bruce Lee was asked a question in an interview. He's like, how good are you? Are you really good? And then Bruce Lee's, what he said, he was like, well, if I say that I'm good, you're going to say that I'm boasting. But if I say that I'm not good, you know that I'm lying. So he's basically not answering the question directly. And when somebody says that, hey, I'm a black belt, they're basically saying, hey, I'm really good. But, that shows a lack of humbleness when you think that you're better than other people. But when you got somebody that's been trained in the martial arts for over 30 years or longer, clearly they're not beginners. Clearly they're not novices. Clearly that they're not garbage. They probably are pretty good. But, when you get to a certain level, you have to remain that humble. You can't say that you're the best because there's no such thing. But then you can't say you're the worst because that's impossible because you've been training for so long. So really the whole ideal of ranking just doesn't really make sense. But there's going to be things where there's going to be authority and ranking. There's going to be authority based on just what's required to run a business, or even a school. You go to a school, who's the head of the school? The principal, and then you might have the assistant principal. It's not about black belts, it's about people that are qualified to run that school. And when you go to a business, there's going to be the owner of the business, and there's going to be managers that might help the owner. So this is required in order to run the business effectively. So if you have a martial arts school, then it should be run by the people that are qualified to run the school. The nice thing about not having rank is that there's no pressure. The pressure is on the people that have rank, that are so-called black belts. People that are black belts should clearly outperform all the people that do not have black belts, because that's the standard that they're supposed to represent. So what I'm basically saying is if I'm somebody that has no black belt and I can outperform somebody that does have a black belt, then that clearly shows that the black belt is not a real black belt. Because if somebody had a real black belt, he should outperform everybody that does not have the black belt in my eyes, because that's what the standard that is supposed to represent. So meaning, black belt to me is kind of like representing the NBA, like the elite basketball association of the world. And everything that is not, everybody that's not in the NBA, they're in the NCAA, they're in college basketball, they're in high school basketball, all over the world. They're all supposed to be below the NBA, because their standards for the other leagues are just not as um, they're just not as strict. They're not as um, difficult to obtain. So basically, everybody in the NBA should be able to outperform everybody below in the leagues below, and that's how I see a black belt supposed to be. Where if you're claiming a black belt, then you should be outperforming everybody that does not have a black belt. You know, otherwise, if you cannot, then you should not be claiming the black belt. Um, that's the way that I see it, and there should be very few black belts in the entire world. The type of respect that I see that the black belts, if they're supposed to be a black belt, if there is a black belt, it's supposed to be respected as if it's an elite training for team, almost like the way that people respect, the way that they respect the Navy SEALs. They say a lot of great things about the Navy SEALs and how hardcore their training is. Well, that's essentially the type of respect that people that claim black belts should have, as far as like reaching an elite level of expression in the martial arts, not just physically, not just combatively, but also spiritually. Spiritually in a sense of like being, at the level of Jesus or Lao Tzu or Buddha or Osho. People that have reached like very high spiritual realms, but then also very combatively developed and also very physically developed. To me, the black belt should be equal to what Bruce Lee was able to represent, or above. It should never be below. So a black belt should be, Bruce Lee should be the standard, and Bruce Lee himself did not go by belt rankings, and he did not have a black belt. He did not promote the black belts. Bruce Lee himself would say that the belt is just good to hold up your pants. So Bruce Lee had no black belt. But I feel that the people that claim black belts should be at Bruce Lee's level of where he left off, or beyond, according to age, gender, things of that nature. If they are below the level of Bruce Lee, then they are not truly black belts. They got to go beyond. So it's like something where black belt to me is supposed to be representing like the Olympic level of reaching a certain status. So it's almost like a black belt is like the Usain Bolt of the 100-meter dash, where he gets a certain time and then nobody can beat that. That's supposed to be the black belt. That's supposed to be like the gold medal. That's supposed to be the black belt. And in order to obtain that black belt, you need to reach his level or above. So you need to beat his time, or you gotta tie his time in order to get that black belt. But if you have anything below what he's obtained, then that's not a true black belt. Just like in the Olympics, there's only one gold medal. There's not, they don't go to the Olympics giving a gold medal to everybody. See, that's another thing that just really doesn't make sense. How can a martial arts school, give out thousands of black belts to people? What type of value does that put to the black belt? That's like having an Olympics and you just give a gold medal to everybody that joined. Everybody that participated in the Olympics, let's just give everybody a gold medal because they're so great that they made it to the Olympics, so let's just give them all gold medals. Then what's the point? Like, what's the value of that? There is no value. People, you need to separate the elite from the advanced. There's going to be the beginners, the intermediate, advanced, and then there's going to be the elite. The black belt is supposed to be the elite. And for me to sit here and say that I am a black belt, it's being arrogant. And a true martial artist wouldn't even claim a black belt, because that's already showing the arrogance and the lack of spiritual growth at that moment already. Only other people can really look from the outside and assess a person to see what, where they think their level is, but it can't really be coming from the individual, because if it comes from the individual, that already signifies arrogance. But if you see somebody, like if I see a Bruce Lee and he doesn't claim a black belt, but I say that he is truly a black belt, that's my judgment upon his level of expression. That's not coming from him. So it's really just, an outside recognition of a person's level of development, and really, you know, that's the way that I see it. Like, I would say, Bruce Lee would deserve a black belt. Jet Li would deserve a black belt. Um, people like that. Like where they get to that level of expression, where it's just a very balanced level of expression in the martial arts, body, mind, and spirit. Everybody's gonna have their thoughts and opinions and who they think deserves a black belt. You know, some people say, that they think that Steven Seagal deserves a black belt, and Van Damme deserves a black belt, and everybody that's been the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles deserves a black belt, and you know, they're gonna have their judgments and criticism of who they think who they think deserves a black belt. But these are just my standards. I feel that there should not be 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds and little children running around with black belts, because it clearly shows that they have not reached their potential. They haven't even reached their potential physically, because their body hasn't even been finished growing yet, to its potential. So, like, a black belt is supposed to represent, like, a person's potential, in my eyes. So there needs to be less black belts given out there to people out there. Like, even for myself, it's like, I train a lot, but it doesn't mean that I deserve a black belt just because I train a lot. It's like, I could practice basketball for 30 years, but it doesn't mean I'll make it to the NBA. Clearly I can't, because I don't have what it takes. So even for myself, there's so much room for growth that I know that I can be better. So, like, claiming a black belt is just showing like a stunted growth, that, hey, there's really nothing more for me to improve upon, because I'm already at the end of the road. I know there's much more room for growth, and that with that comes humbleness. And I feel that a true martial artist has humbleness. He doesn't really believe that he's a black belt, because he knows there's room for growth. But others from the outside can look at the person and be like, well, I think he does deserve a black belt, because he's so much more beyond what I've seen in other people. That's the way that it's supposed to be in my eyes. The black belt is just something where it's supposed to represent the elite, and the whole thing about the degrees of black belt is just, to me, is ridiculous. It's like, you don't got degrees of gold medals in the Olympics. You don't got, like, oh, this is first degree gold medal, this is second degree gold medal, this is third degree gold medal. There's just the gold medal. And as soon as somebody claims black belt, they're already given this title. It already has a certain impact on a person's, an outsider's brain, and then they don't really put in consideration, oh, that's only this first degree, or that's second degree. I mean, when people hear black belt, they think black belt. They don't think about degrees. When people think about police officer, they just think about police officer. They don't think, oh, oh, that's a sergeant, that's a lieutenant. They don't really care about that. This person's a police officer. So really, the black belt's title and status needs to be protected, not the degrees. The degrees don't mean nothing, because everybody's always saying, oh, what belt you are? Oh, I'm a black belt, And that title needs to be, it needs to be protected in order to mean anything. So If there's only 5 people in this entire world that have a black belt, that puts meaning into the belt because only 5 people have it. But if you have millions of people in this world that have black belts, what meaning is there? Everybody has it. There's no meaning anymore. There's no value. So that's the way that I see it. What ends up happening is there ends up becoming more value in people that don't claim the black belt but are actually beyond the black belt, like a Bruce Lee, like a Jet Li. Like people that are beyond the individuals that have the belts, but they claim no belt. That ends up becoming even greater value, you know, because the black belt has been so much thoroughly corrupted and misrepresented. So that's my thoughts on it. But as far as like running a school is concerned, it's just opportunity. It's passion. It's love. It's just if you love to do something, nobody can stop you. You know what I mean? Like no matter what level you are in the martial arts, if you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, you could always find people out there that you could help. You know, you might not be very capable in one area, but then you could be capable in another area, and you could help somebody. And the business industry is all about helping people. And you might not be the best martial artist in the world, but you may know enough in order to help certain people that appreciate your help, and then they give you their business. So running a martial arts school does not necessarily mean that you're the best martial artist in the world. It just means that that's where your passion is, and that's what you're gonna put your time and energy to get better, at, and to turn that into your livelihood, and that's the way that I see it. And also, if you are the founder of the school, nobody could go beyond you because you are the founder. Everybody that comes after you has to basically surrender to your authority, and then you will be able to choose who's going to help you manage the school, and then their authority has to be respected because you have chosen these individuals to be people that are representing your school. So it's just like every other company where you have the CEO, you have the founder, and then he has somebody that runs it, like the general manager, and then they might have the assistant manager. There's that chain of command, and you cannot just join a school and then just to overtake the chain of command because it's not your school. And you're gonna have to learn to submit to authority, just like when you go to work, you need to surrender to the authority, to your boss. You have to listen to your boss. If you want to become an entrepreneur and develop your own business, then hey, go ahead and do that. But most people in this world, probably 90% of the people in this world, are not self-employed. They're working for other people, so they always have to learn to surrender to the authority. And that's how it is in the martial arts. It doesn't matter how great you are at sparring or how fit you are. It doesn't mean that, or how spiritual you are. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you become the owner of the school just because you're super fit. I mean, it has nothing to do with running the school, and you might be well qualified in certain areas, and you might be selected to be one of the top students of the school or one of the managers of the school, but it still doesn't mean that you're running the school. You never will be running the school because it's not your school. That's the type of thing that people have to understand as well. It's like when you have an owner of a business, he's the owner. And you might think that you're more qualified being an employee, but you're not the owner. And I don't care how qualified you think you are still not the owner, and you will not be, unless he has so much trust in you that he's going to, hand over the business for you to run. Kind of like the trust that a father might have for a son, where the father passes away and then the son takes over. Like a Bruce Lee, and then he passes away and then Brandon Lee takes over. That's the type of trust that I'm talking about. And that's how the martial arts is typically handed down to the next generation, is through that deep trust. And to develop that trust from, with a stranger coming through that door, it doesn't happen overnight. And it's not just because the person's super fit or the person could spar. That really has really little to do with whether or not a person's qualified to pass on the teachings of the school. Because a lot of it is spiritual. A lot of it is trust, commitment and loyalty. Not students that just jump from school to school to school, and then they think they're the best because they're super fit or because they could spar, and then they think they could, run the school just because they're fit and they could spar. I mean, that's not what it's about. It's about managing a business and managing it the right way so it could last not just for a couple of months, not just a couple of years, not just a couple of decades, but for many centuries. And that takes a lot of, intellectual development, a lot of spiritual development to put together something and build it for many, many, many years to come. It has nothing to do with just being able to spar, and or being super fit. It's like selecting the president of the United States. What does it have to do with how fit he is or how well he spars? It's not about that. A lot of it is intelligence. A lot of it is spiritualness. Think about selecting somebody to run a business, to be an entrepreneur, and to develop a successful business for many centuries to come or decades to come. Think about the qualities that you're looking for. These are things that martial arts school owners, their eyes are open to. They need to find the right students that where their heart is with the school, and it's not just going to be easily led astray, to go somewhere else just because they're a little bit unhappy or they're a little bored. It's something where, it's a lot deeper. It's a lot deeper, and a lot of times, it may not be a stranger from the streets. It might have to be family. Just think about like when you inherit a lot of money, or your parents spent their whole lives saving, and they save like $1 million. They're not just gonna give it to a stranger on the streets. They're gonna give it to, their family. They're gonna pass it on to their family, so then they can build the family name. And that's how a martial arts school is. You pass it on. You pass the teachings on to people you trust. You don't just pass it on to strangers, that you don't trust. And this really has nothing to do with black belts at all. Not at all. It's about trust. That's what it's really about. It's about trust, and it's also about the inner person, the heart of the person. It has to be a good heart, and that's not something that a martial arts teacher can really teach somebody, unless it's his own kids that he teaches them since they're born. But when you got a stranger coming in through the door, you can't teach a stranger to have a good heart. If he was raised the right way, if he has good karma, if he was born to have a good heart, then he'll walk through the door with a good heart, and then he'll be selected. But a martial art teacher, a Sifu, cannot change a person's heart. It doesn't happen overnight. And martial art teachers do not work. They do not work miracles. So that's essentially what is the most important when you have a martial art teacher that's selecting a student. It's about their heart. And The combat and the physical will come later. It's no problem. But the heart, you can't just change that. People are pretty much born and they're raised a certain way. And if they're raised to be bullies, or they're raised to be violent, and they're raised to be angry, and they're raised to be competitive, and they're raised to be egoistic, that's just not something that you could just change overnight. And the person could take almost a lifetime in order to transform um, his being in order to represent the true way in the martial arts. And that's something that it's a lot of work. And they're almost always going to be set behind because they already started with a crutch. Whereas people that are already raised the right way, they're already naturally in tune with the true way. When you meet them, then immediately they just go, and there's nothing holding them back. And you really, there's no comparison, of, it's just something that's just, they're meant to do that, to go that way. So it's kind of like a Michael Jordan, playing basketball, and it's just in him. You can have somebody else that trains all day, every day, but they'll never be as good as Michael Jordan was. And that's kind of how I feel the heart is as well. Some people, they just naturally are very humble. They're very open, very patient, very good people inside. And those are the people that are supposed to be training the martial arts. And there's going to be another group of people that are very competitive, very egoistic, very aggressive, and they want to hurt people. These people, it's almost like they're just not fit for the martial arts, and it's just not for them. They're better off doing something else. And that's just the reality of it. That's the truth. But yeah, that's the way that I see it. That's my way of thinking. Martial arts is a lot of it is about humbleness. And when somebody claims a black belt, that's not being humble. It clearly isn't. So this whole thing about this culture assessing a person's development in the martial arts by asking them what belt they are is just absurd. And it's sad that people think that way. That's not what it's supposed to be, not at all. And I just want to kind of, get people to see the other side, to understand, that it's not about the belt at all. Like, you cannot certify somebody, of having a good heart or just being a good person, or it's a way of being, it's a way of life, and it's just about bettering yourself as a human being, and if you want to help other people, then just go through what's required by law to get in a position where you can help other people. So, if you want to be a doctor, then you got to find out what the law requires in order for you to be certified as a doctor in order to help people in that area. If you want to cook food for people and share your food, then you just got to go to the state and figure out what the requirements are to legally, serve food to the public. And with the martial arts, if you want to help people, you can. It just really has nothing to do with rank. There's no authority out there that's going to tell you that you can't help somebody. If you feel that you can help people, then that's great. And you see people all over the YouTube, all over the internet helping other people. Like, they're not experts, but they learn something that day. They learn how to They learn how to change the oil on their car. They're not a mechanic, but they learn how to change the oil of the car, so that they make a video to share with other people what they've learned. You know, this person might not be a Beethoven, but he learned some basics on the keyboard, and he's gonna help you learn what he knows. You know, I might not be an English professor, but if I learn the alphabet and somebody else doesn't know the alphabet, then I could teach them the alphabet. That's essentially the way that I see it. It's like there's no such thing as somebody who's just a master in everything, and then there's nothing more for him to learn, and he's just above everybody else in everything. No, it's like a martial arts, a true martial arts master is somebody who's just training, living, and just sharing, and humbleness is very important, and if there's a lack of humbleness, then you know that there's something wrong, so that's my way of seeing it.